Greetings, pet lovers. Bridget here with First Street Pets, and today we're going to talk about a touchy subject. What do I do when I cannot keep my dog? So I'm sure I may get some flack from this video. As you know, I am involved in the animal welfare world, and this is a touchy subject, but it's easy to judge others for wanting to give up their pet when you are in a secure situation. There are many reasons why someone may be unable to keep their dog, and so I'm going to talk about those reasons today, and also some of the steps you can take to give up your dog in a positive way, or the most positive way that you can, or how to make some changes so that you can keep your dog in your life and in your family. So some of the reasons that someone might have to give up a dog are that the dog is aggressive. They may have bitten someone, an adult or a child. They may be fighting and attacking other dogs in the home. They may have attacked or killed another pet in the home, such as a cat. This is a serious issue that needs to be resolved one way or the other, and rehoming the dog may be one way of handling that. The dog may simply be untrained. If you have a large Labrador that's not leash trained, that's flinging himself around the house to the point where you're keeping him in the backyard, then that's not fair for either you or the dog. This is an issue that has to be resolved one way or the other. For many people, the decision to give up a pet is financial, that perhaps you can't afford a vet bill. And if your dog gets hit by a car or needs some kind of major surgery, it can easily go into the thousands of dollars. And for someone who is struggling or unemployed, or even for someone who has money, that's a lot of money to come up with all at once. For some, it's that they can't even afford food for their pet, that their very little money that they have is what they need to buy their family's groceries for the week, and they can't even afford to buy pet food for one reason or another. A major problem in recent years is finding pet-friendly housing, especially where I live in the Bay Area, California, and other metro areas around the country. Rents are high, and landlords can afford to be picky. Many places do not allow pets at all, or if they do, maybe they'll let you have one cat or one small dog, and it's going to cost you extra. So despite exhaustive searches, some people who have to move are simply unable to find a place that will keep their pet, let alone multiple pets. A dog owner may have lost their home or lost their job, and unfortunately this is happening right now with many people getting laid off, having an uncertain future, and perhaps collecting unemployment or some kind of assistance right now, but that's not going to last forever. And they need to plan for where they're going to go and what they're going to do with their pets. You may have a conflict with your housemates, whether they are friends, family, or just roommates. There may be all different kinds of conflicts between you and that person, between your pets and their pets. Maybe your dogs are fighting. Maybe your dog is going after their cat. Maybe they've just decided they don't like your pet, and there's some kind of an issue that needs to be worked out, but it's not working the way it is. So I'm going to discuss 6 options for things that you can do when you are unable to keep your dog. One of the options when you need to give up a dog is to surrender to your local animal shelter. Now, this can be a good option because still in some shelters, you can just walk in the door and surrender at any time. Now, this is changing, which is a really good thing. Many shelters are now requiring appointments. They are offering surrender counseling, which can help you find another option for your pet. But many shelters are still just letting anybody walk in off the street and drop off an animal. So if you're in a hurry and this needs to be done today, this is an option. That's the good part. The bad part is once you sign that paper, you have no control over what happens next. The dog could be euthanized. the dog could be sent to another shelter or a rescue group, or could be put up for adoption. And sometimes dogs can sit in adoptions for days, weeks, months, or even years at some shelters. Kind of crazy, but it does happen. When shelters don't have a good adoption program and connections, they end up warehousing these animals for years. So these are some of the possible outcomes for your dog, and you may never know what happens, and you may not have the option of getting them back. So it can be quick and easy, but it has a significant negative side. Now, as I said, the shelters that offer behavioral counseling and other kinds of support can be a lot better because they're going to give you more resources to deal with instead of just taking the pet and your surrender fee. If your dog is adopted by someone else, it may work out great or it may not. So you also don't know what the results of that will be. You don't know who will be the new owner of your dog. So it may not work out. They may end up returning the dog or giving it to another person. So again, once you sign that paper, you have no control over what happens. Another option is to surrender your dog to a rescue. Now, there's some benefits to this, but there's also a downside, just like with every other option. So rescue groups often have the ability to work with issues and to take more time with individual animals than shelters, which are taking in animals often in volume. So with a rescue group, they're typically foster-based, so the dog will be in a home. If there's any kind of a behavioral or training issue, they can usually work with that. If there's a health issue, if they need some kind of surgery or other medical treatment, they can fundraise for that as nonprofits. So these things are all really positive. And since they're foster-based, they're not trying to make space in a shelter. They can take the time to really vet the adopters and try to find the best home. Now, the downside is that every rescue is different. There are thousands and thousands of rescues around the country. Some are great, some are okay, and some are nightmares and end up in trouble with animal control. So you don't know initially which category the rescue may fall into. So you're going to want to do your homework before working with any rescue or shelter for that matter to find out what is the likelihood of your dog being placed in a good home. Unfortunately, some rescues end up hoarding and having hundreds of dogs in their house. In my years in animal control, I dealt with some of these situations where people had over 100 dogs or cats in their house and yard under deplorable conditions, both for animals and people. So while those situations are rare, they are out there. So definitely do your homework when working with rescues and also discuss with them what your options are. Some are very open to giving pets back to people when they get back on their feet, depending on whatever your personal situation is that made you have to give up your dog, while others will not. Once you sign that paper, that's it. You have no rights to get your dog back, even if you change your mind the next day. So can be a good option, but definitely do your homework. Another option is that you can give your dog away to someone you know. Now, this can be good because if you're a pet lover and a pet owner, you probably have a lot of friends who are as well. And maybe they have pets, maybe they live in a pet-friendly home or they own their own home. So they may be able to take the dog for you. So this is somebody you know, somebody that you can trust, at least you hope you can. I'll tell a story about that in just a minute. But hopefully this is a trusted person that you know will take your dog, whether temporarily or permanently, and can provide them with a good home and give you updates as needed. And you may have the possibility of taking the dog back because some situations are temporary. Maybe you've just lost your job, you've had some trouble with money, or you're moving, or anything like that that's going on in your life that may get resolved. So you may want to get your dog back at some point, or at least be able to see him or her and see how they're doing. Now, unfortunately, this can go bad. Years ago, I had a friend who moved to a house that was not pet friendly, and she gave her cat to what she thought was a trusted friend. Now, this friend kept the cat for a while, but then was going away to college and didn't have any way of taking the cat with her. So she left the cat with her relative for the time that she was in college, expecting that she would take care of the cat until she came home. Well, the relative didn't like the cat bit her, and she surrendered the cat to the local shelter for euthanasia. So thank God the cat had a microchip, and the original owner was eventually contacted and got the cat back. Actually, I ended up going to the shelter, picking up the cat and bringing her back to the original owner, who by that point was able to take her back. But that's just one of the things that can happen, where you think that you have a good situation for your pet, and then you really don't, because things change and the pet gets handed off to yet another person, and they could end up having a bad fate. So if you're going to give your pet to someone that you know, you want to make sure that it's someone you can trust and that you're really clear about what your intentions are. Another option is finding a stranger. So you can advertise on Craigslist or something like that. Now, you can probably find somebody to take your pet, and they may be great. I know people who've gotten pets from Craigslist or other online news outlets, and everything's worked out fine. But it's a total crapshoot. You have no idea who these people are, what their intentions are, and chances are that you'll never talk to them again or have any idea what happens to your pets. So not what I would highly recommend unless you're really desperate. A better option is to work with shelters and rescues, and some other animal welfare groups have online forums where you can rehome pets, or where they will kind of assist you in rehoming a pet without having to bring the pet to a shelter. So in other words, you still have your pet at home, but you can advertise through them, and they'll kind of serve as a go-between to find an owner. So that can be another option. But like with anything else on the internet, it's a big gamble. You don't know who you're dealing with, and there's no guarantee what's going to happen once you hand your dog over to a stranger. So one of the options is to work it out and not give up your dog. And this is something that if the shelters offer surrender counseling, they will help you with that. So some of the things that you can do are to get training for your dog. As I said, a lot of dogs are given up because they're not trained. They go to the bathroom in the house. They're impossible to walk on a leash. They bark all day. They dig holes. You name it, they do it. But there's always a reason for that. The dogs aren't getting walked. They aren't getting attention or exercise, or they just don't know how to be housebroken. It's not like it's a natural thing that they're born knowing. So getting some training, getting some behavioral help can actually solve the problem to the point where you can keep your dog. Or even if you end up rehoming your dog, the dog has better life skills now. So your home or the new home is more likely to be successful. Now, there are private trainers. Of course, right now, people aren't traveling a whole lot, wanting to go to other people's homes, but a lot of things can be done virtually, just like this video you're watching now. There's training being done on Zoom and other platforms, or just talking over the phone, just like in the old days. Once things start opening up again, there are group classes you can go to just for the basics if you're not having a major issue, and that can be another good option. The vet bills can be tough because, believe me, I know I've maxed out credit cards taking care of animals, and it's no fun paying off those bills for years afterwards. But there are some options. I'm sure you've heard of Care Credit. Most vets will have the applications in their lobby for you to fill out if you suddenly need to come up with a whole bunch of money that you don't have. There are other grant programs. I don't know any off the top of my head right now, and it seems to change all the time. So if I can find anything current, I will link it in the description. If not, just do a Google search for any kind of grant programs or assistance for paying pet medical bills. You can also just call your local shelter and find out if they have any kind of a fund. Some places have what they'll call like a Fido and Fluffy fund, where they can help with special surgeries, or there may be rescue groups or other charitable organizations that can help you with a one-time amount to get through that crisis with your pet. So that will enable you to get your pet the medical care they need and to be able to keep them in your home. If you're having a hard time paying for food, there are quite a few different food pantries. Many shelters run food pantries, as do rescues, also churches and people food pantries. So it is recognized now more in today's world that people are better off keeping their pets. Pets are better off with their families, and that those with means do not have a right to judge those without for whatever their circumstances are. So you can often find bags of food at shelters. They'll either use food that is donated that they can't use, or they'll have an agreement with a food company or a food store to give them the bags that aren't selling, or whatever the situation is. So you can get that food for your pets and stock up, and then you don't have to spend the money on it. Finding pet-friendly housing is a really tough one. Like I said, especially in the metro areas like where I live, it's very expensive. It's hard to find housing, period, let alone a place that is pet-friendly. In my area, a rental house can easily go for $2,500 or $3,000 a month. And that's more than some people even make in the month if they're a low wage earner, or they don't have several adults earning a wage in the home. It can be very challenging. However, there are some resources out there. I'll do a little research and see if I can link anything. But I know some shelters have lists as well of various housing authorities and some pet-friendly communities. I did live in a pet-friendly apartment community once in the San Mateo County, and that was really kind of nice. There was about 400 apartments, and everybody had a pet. So, of course, there were rules and regulations, and you had to keep your dog on a leash and pick up and whatnot, just kind of common courtesy stuff. But it was pretty nice to be in a community of all other people who were also pet owners. So if apartment living is something you're looking for, there definitely are communities out there that are pet friendly. You just have to take a little more time to look. It can be challenging if you're going to be sharing a home, renting a room, or something like that. But that may work out if you can move in with someone that you know, because you're not necessarily dealing with a landlord or a management company. You may be able to negotiate with a friend or family member to bring a pet into the home, maybe by just assuring them that you are responsible, you will look after the pet, clean up after them, etc., and address any issues as they come up. So there are some possibilities out there. Again, I'll try to link something in the description, but if not, I would check with your local shelters and rescues. If your dog is a service dog, I believe, don't quote me, I'm not a legal expert, that landlords will have to allow you to have your dog in your home. So I'm not going to even start the conversation about the whole what is a real service dog kind of thing. I'm going to leave that up to you to discuss it with your doctor. But I would talk to your doctor about this and find out what you need to do to get your dog to be a service dog so that you can bring them with you. And I know some people do this for housing when there's no other way. I've also known folks who did this to bring their pet on a plane so that they didn't have to ride in cargo for whatever the reason was. So this is another possibility. Again, I don't want to start an argument about what is a real service dog or a fake service dog, but if this is your only option to get housing, to give up your pet, then I would definitely look into it. Regarding the conflicts in the household, so this is going to sound really stupid, I'm sure, but you can try to talk it out. Maybe you've done this already and it's not getting anywhere, but a lot of people just don't want to talk. They don't want to try to work things out. But if it means that you have to give up your pet or you have to move, you definitely want to try to do that first. So talk to your housemates, try to figure out what the problem is, see if there's a solution. Maybe if your dog is aggravating others in the home, you can keep them in your room, or use a baby gate or something. You know, there's ways that you can work things out to mitigate the issue. And if it becomes so bad, then you may actually have to move, or maybe the other person will have to move. It just depends on whose house it is, if you're all renters, or whatever the particular situation is. But if you're having conflicts with the people you live with and you give up your pet and the conflicts continue, now you've given up your pet for nothing, because the problem wasn't the pet, it was the person. So anyway, I would definitely look into that and see if there's any way you can work it out, or if not, if there's a possibility that you or the other person can live elsewhere. So the last solution, and I've saved it for last because it should be your last resort, is to euthanize your dog or put your dog to sleep. Now, I want to bring this up because although it's the last resort, it is an option, and it is not an unfair option in some circumstances. Now, this is my opinion. Obviously, I don't think it's ethical to euthanize a dog because you simply don't want it anymore. And most veterinarians will not do that. If you bring your pet in and say, I just don't want my pet, chances are they will either turn the pet over to a rescue or take it themselves. I've known many people who worked at and with veterinary clinics who adopted these pets that the owners simply did not want anymore. However, if your pet is genuinely dangerous, and some dogs are, if they have killed cats, if they have killed another dog, if they have seriously bitten and injured someone in an incident that wasn't provoked, and again, there's many opinions on what is or isn't provoked, but if this dog is a danger and a liability, then having them put to sleep is not an unfair option. Some dogs that I have known have actually had mental issues and just truly been unpredictable. It's rare. Usually dogs' actions are pretty predictable, but I have known a few that were truly unpredictable and their behavior was bizarre and they did cause harm to others. So when the owners made the decision to euthanize, it was not an unfair decision, and it was not after considering all other options. Now, it might be good to put in a call to the shelter to see if they have some counseling for you, or if they can give you an idea if your issue is workable or not, or you can call a private trainer. Now, this is probably going to sound bad, but I just want to caution you that trainers often want to solve these issues. I mean, obviously no one wants to say, yes, euthanize your dog, but the alternative can be worse. And I'll give you an example. A friend of mine adopted a dog who turned out to be very aggressive. And this friend is the best owner that any dog could have. And I will swear to you, she never did a thing wrong. The dog was born with some very aggressive, possessive, resource guarding issues, and that never changed throughout the dog's life. He even showed that as a puppy. When a puppy growls over a bone, you don't think too much of it because they're just a puppy. But when they weigh 100 pounds and they still do this and more, it becomes an issue. So my friend was going to euthanize the dog when he was about a year old because it was turning into an unsafe situation for her family. She consulted a trainer. The trainer talked her out of it and gave her all these exercises to do. She spent the next 4 years with her life literally revolving around this dog, that everything had to revolve around the dog. You couldn't go for a walk without a certain type of leash, without a bag of treats. You could only go on a certain path because you didn't want to run into any people or other dogs. It got to the point where she had key codes on the doors in the house so the children wouldn't accidentally open them and let the dog out. So this is not fair for anyone to have to live this way. And I'm sorry, but people's lives and your family's safety are more important than a dog. So when one day out of the blue, he viciously attacked her cat and tore him open, she then made the decision to have him euthanized. This was after having the dog in her home for 5 years. The cat, by the way, survived, thank God. So again, it's your decision what you want to do for your family. Definitely get some advice and get help, but ultimately you have to make that decision. So in conclusion, I'd like to say that no one has a right to judge you for making a decision to give up your pet. In animal welfare, as I mentioned earlier, people can be very judgy, very righteous. I can't tell you how many times I've had people tell me, I would sleep in my car before I would give up my pet. No, you wouldn't. You would not live in a car. Chances are that you've never slept in a car, you've never slept outside in a tent camping, let alone understand the realities of living in a vehicle, which many people are now doing, even people who are working and trying to get back into housing. So it's a very cavalier thing to say, but not understanding another person's situation, you have no right to say that what they are doing is wrong or right. So I encourage you to look into all your options, try to reach out for help, as early as you can instead of waiting until the day you're moving or the day that it's become critical. Try to get some advice, get some help, make a plan. And ultimately, if you have to give up your pet, that you know you've done the best you can to ensure a good future for them and to take the best care of yourself and your family. So one last note, if you do give up your dog to another private party, whether someone you know or through the internet or whatever, meaning not through a shelter or rescue where they handle the adoption, if your dog is microchipped, make sure that you get that information updated, because dogs do become lost every day, get away from their owners, especially in a new home. And as many as half of the pets coming into shelters with chips are not currently registered. I can tell you I've done 1,001 calls myself where you check the chip, you get the phone number, you call the person, they say, oh, I gave my dog away 3 years ago. I don't remember who I gave it to. So it's kind of like selling a car. You fill out that little piece of paper and you mail it into the DMV. You want to make sure that when you hand the dog off to the other person, that you're giving them the information and that you're contacting the chip company and telling them that you are giving up ownership of this dog and that this is the information for the new owner. So you want to make sure that happens like that day, because you'll forget, they'll forget, and then when the time comes, they don't have any current ID. I hope this information has been helpful. I know it's a touchy subject, but it's something that people do need to talk about. When we don't talk about things and we shame others, we don't reach out for help. And ultimately, more pets end up losing their homes when owners don't look for help, where they may have found a solution to resolve the problem, to keep the dog, or perhaps a temporary placement until they get back on their feet, and then they can get their canine family member back into their home. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please post them below. I would love to hear from you. If you or anyone you know is struggling with keeping pets, I would love to hear about it. As I said, I will try to post some helpful links in the description, and I hope that you will do some research and ask around in your area to get the help that you need to get through this difficult time.